Hey, let's go.
I guess we can start with high school because then that's technically where I had you as a coach for 1 year. But
Sorry about
I was
that.
trying
I
to think about
apologize for
it.
that.
No, I was trying to think
I
of was
think
in
you
the,
were too sweet and they were too cutthroat. You
I
were very,
believe it.
yeah. Mhm.
Here comes little old me from JV and is now thrown into the starting shortstop position. I know you remember this one game, but we were playing
So I
Cal
was coaching
High.
you as a sophomore?
Yes,
Oh, I was the
yes.
guy that put you in that position?
Well, technically.
Sorry, man.
And
My bad.
no, and I had already racked up 6 errors, like errors, no question on the books if it was an error or not. And I went up to you and I was like, just pull me out. Like, clearly I'm not cut out for this. And you just said, like, no, like, you got to stick it through. Hindsight 2020, I'm so glad that that had happened because thinking about it, like, I just needed to just go through that, like that ugliness of just not like not being able to perform when I wanted to, and taking then the steps from there to figure out like, okay, well, what's going on, like what's wrong, like I know how to play,
Mhm.
so what else in my game was off. Like, I'm so glad my parents had me play multiple sports growing up, because and that was like something that I was thinking about too. Like, there's a lot of things that I know that I could do well in softball, which is like my the sport that I chose to pursue, because I played volleyball, because I played basketball.
Well, first of all, I apologize for giving you that scar tissue, but I don't apologize because I believe
No,
that
go
I believe
ahead.
those scars are important, and I believe that at that time it had to do with I knew you could play, you can play,
No, like
you played every day in
we had
practice.
plenty of people that could have gone in and just like,
No, no, no. Yeah, exactly. Okay,
saved
yeah,
me.
that's fair. Coach Stephanie did a good job of making sure those other girls weren't bitches to you, and
Hmm.
we were all
Hmm.
going to grow together, and we were all going to get good together, and it was going to be better. Was that not your normal position? You were a second baseman primarily?
No, I was always a shortstop, but I think like
See,
I'm
come on,
sure
man. It sounds
I'm
funny now
sure
when you talk about it,
every
right?
softball, like, I knew how to play, I knew the game.
I'm not super tolerant of that part of that game. I'm not super tolerant of kids saying, "Oh, I can't do this or I can't do that." You Mexican or you Mexican. Just so you know, Chuck and I just spent an hour literally talking about that exact same thing about playing multiple sports and having that sort of cross training physically, mentally situation. It's so weird that you're
Like,
so
even it's
happy.
so weird because as a coach now, like, I can look at my girls and I can know like she played multiple sports growing up, and I can tell the ones like, even when I'm out recruiting, like, I know she's only played softball or her parents have only stuck her with softball. I wish parents didn't do that. That's just like from my perspective, because there's so many different elements, not just like physically, but mentally, that I've learned that I could have only learned from not playing softball. Looking back at it now, like, I don't think I ever felt, at least for me, like burnt out with softball, because it wasn't always softball busy. It was like, okay, we have basketball practice, we have tournaments, we have volleyball. And
Just that change in atmosphere is such a
yeah,
rejuvenating kind of a thing for kids.
My biggest problem was they didn't understand the game, Chuck. So you would play 5 games, but you wouldn't have the day-to-day nuts and bolts, the heads up baseball concept. Like,
Sure.
why do we do this first and third defense? Or what is a double steal? Or what is a pickle? Like, time where we could talk about the game and understand the game. You were getting reps and you were having competition, but you don't know how many times I went out to a softball field and seen the most flat, most low energy, most boring, most ugly softball I've ever seen in my life.
So you get through your sophomore year, and where does it go from there?
so I mean, at that point, like, I started to develop like this interest in just like the mental game. There's one friend that I had in high school who I think she played a few sports, but she was more smart, on the smart end. And she would always tell me, like, Tara, you're too nice, like, you need to be a jerk sometimes. And grew in that and had more confidence in myself, and I feel like that carried out on the field, and it started to develop to where even if I did
Putting a
make a
hard tag on
mistake,
somebody, whack.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. And like, I feel like I carried myself with a little bit more like sass, but still, respect. I knew what I was doing. I could do it. I was still open to learning, but I needed to kind of have that sass. And
would
like
you agree,
recruiting
Tara? Would you
process.
agree that almost all of your girls on your collegiate team are SAS plus? I mean,
Oh,
is
yeah.
that what it takes to get to the pinnacle of college softball?
Mhm.
And you had the
So
sassiest coach of all time, though, right? I mean, she was an Olympic athlete. What was her name?
Julie Smith of
Yeah, so Julie
96.
Smith Chuck was a gold medal winner in softball coaching at Division III, and
Huh.
I'm sure you can imagine her standard. I
Oh,
remember
yeah.
speaking to you, T, about it, like, Jesus, man, she wants to kill me, or I'm like, no,
Mhm.
she
Mhm.
was rough. She was rough.
Mhm. If I had to coach myself, like the type of athlete that I was, and
Yeah.
I was pretty hard-headed,
Yeah.
I feel like at that point. And so
I think we all,
commend and
I think all
respect
three of
her.
us, I think all three of us share that same concept. We're all coaches, and we were kind of hard to coach. We have
Yeah.
that conversation from time to time about how it would have been to coach ourselves, and
Mhm.
it probably wouldn't have been as easy as we try to pretend it is. But during that time, you were studying sports psychology, and how did that, with a coach like that, did it influence how your thought process went as to what, now you're a coach now, and did you develop some of those instincts during that time?
So when I was at Laverne, they had like limited sports psych classes. So whatever they had, I took. And we were actually like the team was utilizing one of the sports psych professors there. So she worked with us. And that was when I kind of got to see like actual sports psychology concepts delivered to a
Gotcha.
team. Because I feel like sports psych was kind of not new, but not a lot of people were talking about it. And I feel like it still had like maybe a negative reputation
Yeah, it
or
was
like
for
a
broken
fluff.
athletes.
And so I feel like with that is what made me interested in pursuing sports psych for my master's degree, like higher education.
Number
Okay.
one, what was it like to be coached by me? Number two,
Okay.
what was, if somebody's listening, even, no matter what sport, what was the initial portal to start learning about the head game? But like, what was the thing that sort of went, okay, here's the path. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pursue this with reckless abandon.
So I would say being coached under you, I
was just kidding about that. You don't have to.
Well, I want to answer it just like.
Well, what do you think made her crazy enough to start to think about sports psychology?
Yeah, I'm the one that made you all goofy.
No, I feel like you were demanding, but without being demeaning.
I learned it from that guy. That's the guy that taught me to do it, and then I teach you. Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it. That's very nice of you to say.
I guess that it's with you, but I feel like once you introduced me to Mind Gym, and I read Mind Gym, and I had never even thought about the game in that way. And I think like the light bulb or the like aha moment was when basically it was just talking about like how you visualize yourself playing. Like, can you see in your mind yourself being successful?
Right.
And it wasn't until I thought that and realized like I could play back positive moments that I was successful, moments that I know I can do A, B, and C, and then use that into my game while obviously like implementing like affirmations and positive self-talk. But I don't think it wasn't until I read that and processed it that I realized like, yeah, like clearly like our minds are so strong, but like at that point I wasn't even like tapping into that part of my game. I was just kind of reacting in physical, motions, and that was key for me.
So that was it. But also we had spent time together as a hitting instructor, a one-on-one hitting instructor relationship. And we would have a half-hour lesson and probably spend at least 5 minutes sort of psychologically analyzing stuff and getting the head right, which I thought was more important than the swings almost, I mean, Mind Gym is those kind of concepts that you're talking about, Tara, help you as a mother, help you as a businesswoman, help you as a wife.
Oh yeah.
And a sister and a daughter.
Having some sort of control over your self-talk is probably the number one thing that helps you get through the world on a general, no matter what age you are. That self-talk is is a destroyer. And we learned how to do some of that when I learned how to do some of that with our kids, football wise, it really made a difference because they didn't even understand what that meant, and once they had a little glimmer of, once they had a little glimmer of that, it changed their outlook on things,
Right. It's like, I feel like you grow up and people tell you like, well, just think positive, think positive. And it's not until you really like process that and think about it and see, okay, how can we do that? Like, how can we talk to ourselves positive or like have that growth mindset?
You don't want to get the straitjacket put on you because you're crazy. You're not hearing voices. But you persevered. Probably. You learn the toughness. You persevered.
Missouri was one of the ones that was like talking and did a little spiel about their graduate program, what the students do with the teams. And as soon as I heard that, like I just had notes on my little notebook, and I was like, that is a school that I want to go to. And so that's how I ended up in Columbia, Missouri for 2 years.
Wow.
I mean, the poor girls that had me probably as a coach during those times, because I'm not the same person. I'm not the same coach that I was then. But I think it's just like stripping it down. To me, it's like I need to be able to know my athlete as a person and what their strengths are and how I can help them be confident in that, but then also like where their areas for growth and how am I going to help them get there, not only with like in the way in which I talk to them, but just figuring out like what works best for them and making them better people. And I know it sounds weird because it has nothing to do with softball, but that's like my environment that I get to do it in. And that's the sport that I know and I love. And
right. That's your lab. And we often see on ESPN, somebody falling from grace, a DUI or a domestic violence. And Colleen was always asking me, he's like, what's wrong with these guys? I'm like, well, they're not fully human. They're larger than life superheroes. They're not fully human. And I just love the fact that you're willing to say, hey, the long game is if we can make you a better human, you're going to perform a lot better. I mean, it's a little bit of faith, but it's not really faith. I mean, it's really straight math, if you ask me.
Yes, you're going to get your different issues at whatever level you're at. So clearly I coach D3 right now. And so some of the issues that were brought up for Division I were obviously different, but I feel like when you take it back, a lot of it stems from them just as into like being people first.
Isn't it enough that we teach our players to be champions? I mean, aren't they going to learn enough just by winning?
I feel like I've seen teams that have been super successful and win, but those people as individuals struggle later on. I would rather have you strive to be a better person and that hopefully and essentially help you be a better athlete, and regardless of the wins and losses.
Is that well received in your job interviews?
Well, I feel like even in the softball world, I feel like it's still a little different, even just being female. And so I think there's still a lot of, hoops that we have to go through, even though we are a female sport.
And then I get introduced for the first time and I say to them, you have one job and one job only, and that's to love each other. And I only have one job, and that's to love you. And the looks on their faces were like, who the hell did they just hire? Who is this hippie goofball? We got a bunch of semi-hood kids and kids from tough neighborhoods who really, once they understood that loving you meant that I was going to confront you on every bit of bad behavior, and I was going to hold you accountable. And you loving each other was about holding each other accountable and not allowing bad behavior. It changed everything. Are there unique things that you would say are different for coaching girls and women that you noticed and have kind of geared yourself toward?
Women were complicated, but I think kind of the core things that I see with what these girls want is just like the reassurance that they're good. Like I'm not going to tell them what they want to hear, but by getting to know them, getting to know what their strengths are, and knowing them as a person, I can develop a relationship to call them out on it, and they can be upset or whatever the case is, but they know that it's coming from a place of like love. Like the biggest thing that I see is when I help my athletes discover like what their natural strengths are, not as an athlete, like as a person. I have them take the Clifton Strengths Finder and figure out what their strengths are, but having everybody take that and see what their natural strengths are, because then I can figure out too like how I can communicate with you.
Man, Tara, that's cheating. That's cheating. You know all the answers, man. That's the hardest part about coaching.
Okay, Johnny, give me a positive self-statement, and that is like the hardest thing in the world for young athletes to do. I mean, it took us
or
a long...
even hearing it. Like, I feel like hearing it too, like
they can't wear it.
Like teaching them to receive that and be open to compliments and affirmations. It's a different like dynamic for them, but really embrace that. That's how you're seen and you're viewed, and own it. They wear it a little bit different.
We had to do a lot of, so tell me what you heard, and have them repeat back what they heard about themselves. And kids struggled. a certain confidence that along those lines it was what's your team building strategy?
This is my first year at Laverne, my alumni, so Division III, and it's very different. We just go to weights and conditioning all fall and not have to worry about softball. We just tried to do a lot of little things at practice wherever we could. And I think one of the bigger things that we did, head coach, his wife works at Pepperdine, and she works with students and like team camaraderie and all of that. So we had her work with our girls, and we stepped out first, not us coming in and saying like, this is what we're doing this year.
I really leaned into the idea that they needed to know about who was before them, and they need to live up to that.
Well, so I think kind of like what you're saying too, I think because I was an alum, and because now they play at this gorgeous stadium. They have like their locker room, and they have all this. I played at a public park. Like we had little T-ballers next to like the field right next to us playing at the same time we would be playing. And so kind of giving them that perspective and letting them, like, I was in the same uniform, but my experience looks very different than yours. Just being appreciative to get to where we are at now.
You just missed it, right? They were like building the stadium like as you were graduating, right?
Oh, that was one of the recruiting like tools used. Like, we're gonna have a brand new stadium. I'm like, okay,
sure.
I don't care if you play in a big stadium or a small stadium. There's certain chemistries that happen on good teams that kind of transcend those things.
We have a strong coaching staff to where it wouldn't skip a beat without me being there. But
don't kid yourself.
Well, I mean, we weren't playing games, so it's okay.
But the idea that you guys were literally tougher than your boyfriends most of the time, and you were stronger mentally than your boyfriends most of the time. And I would venture to say probably even as an adult, the women are the superior program, but I think everyone knows, but
yeah, we do.
Yeah, we're dudes. We know that you guys are the bomb. Give them permission to be badasses was like something that for some women, you had to be deliberate. And to some degree, Tara, for you a little bit, I had to say, you got to go out there and be a badass. You're a strong woman. Yeah. You're a badass woman. Don't hide that. No one's looking. And if they are looking and they don't like it, then fuck them.
What would be your 30 seconds of advice to young ladies and young girls that are...
I would say be confident in who you are, but then also be open to learning and to growing. And so I think that people are here, and your coaching staff, the people that are connected to you are there to help you grow. And so be open to it and utilize it. And I think one of the biggest like takeaways that I have, just again, being a coach, develop those relationships with the people that you're surrounded with, because like the memories that I take away from being in sport, a lot of them have nothing to do with my performance. It's about the team. It's about being together and growing each other and being able to hold each other accountable. Because you could be successful all you want, but if your team isn't winning, how successful are you really?
Spent a lot of time with growth mindset, and maybe you can just explain to the young people and to the old people what that means, because I know I could use some growth mindset right about now.
For growth mindset, so that's like one of the first topics I work with any team that I'm a part of, because if I can't get them out of a fixed mindset, I'm not going to get very far with being able to coach them and them even being coachable. Viewing challenges and viewing how you can become successful. Like I know that I am capable of growing. I know that I am capable of being able to do X, Y, Z. Having a fixed mindset is seeing your growth as stagnant. And so that would be like kind of me saying, you know, like, I'm just not good at whatever that is. Like, I never knew how to do that. That's not my thing. It's been interesting to have to work with my girls and have them reframe that thinking of them telling themselves for so long, like, I'm only like, you know, if they're like, if I have a slapper who could easily get in some power, a slap hitter, like, no, I'm just a slapper. I'm just speed. I'm just this. And it's getting them out of the mindset of like, well, let's explore that. Let's see what you can do. Cause you know, maybe you'd be surprised you could actually hit one out. Breaking down what their self-talk looks like in that. And so like, they know what to do in this situation. This equals this, but it's okay. Once they have to like think the game and think different scenarios. Okay, well, what if it's this type of runner and it takes you this way? Like, what else could you do in this situation?
That's such a great gift to be able to give to those kids, because it frees them up, because so much of their identities are made up of, does my coach like me? Does my coach care about me? Does my coach, you know, want me to be a better person? I mean, those things are things that go unsaid, but they're really about why a lot of kids.
Like, I try to give them the opportunity to make decisions, because you would not believe how, like, I'd be like, what do you guys want to eat? I don't know. Like they don't, I think they've just been told for so long, like they just listen and they just do, and they don't ever like analyze things or process things or they're not decisive. And so anytime that I can give them decisions, whether it's like, okay, these are our two options for today, how we're going to start, do you want to do this or this, and have them make a decision. Post sport, it's like you're put into this situation where no one's telling you what to do. And you're just kind of looking like, okay, like, I don't know how to make decisions for myself.
That's not a good, strong female program, by the way. We don't want that. We don't want that. I love that idea as a coach. You know, my practice plan is so precious to me. And then for you to say, all right, do you want to do, you know, backhands or, you know, what do you want to do? I'm like, wow, what a fantastic outside the box concept. Everyone can learn from that. Sure. Thank you so much for that. That's amazing.
I want to be able to like mold my athletes and see them through 4 years. I want to be able to be a head coach and build a successful program, but then also, like, I think what would be most meaningful to me is like getting the cards from the girls that I've coached of they're getting married now or they're having their first kid, and still being able to keep those relationships going, or that communication, even though, you know, I might not even talk to them for like 5 years, but then I get a Christmas card like, hey, we're getting married, or whatever the case is. Like, that's like my end goal of what
that happened to me. This happened to me last year. I don't know. I got some card about somebody's wedding. I don't know.
I do like I haven't done it in a while, but I'm very like creative, artistic, I guess. And so I really like to paint. I haven't painted in a little while, but and when I lived in Missouri, I would have like my canvas out and I would just like, you know, do paintings and stuff.